Actually, that's very interesting. Remember, we had Alex Loiz in one of our episodes, and he was saying that he was shocked about how different the US versus the European market was in terms of like whenever he was pitching.
Yeah.
And whenever he was in the US, it was all about kind of the bold vision. Like, didn't care about numbers as much.
The chemistry, the idea.
The chemistry.
Yeah.
And as Europe, kind of, we're more like fact-driven, which is not a bad thing. And do you see kind of that readiness changing between stages? Like, what are you expecting from a seed level company within the deep tech space versus a kind of Series B?
The maturity of the data and the metrics and the whole story needs to be a little bit different. The assumptions need to be way more specific as you grow, because now you know, right? When you're just starting, you have this excuse that I don't really know. I have to test the market, I have to test the product, which is fine. But, a couple of years later, you should have already a few tests, right? So your assumptions need to be narrowed down to more specific numbers. And I think that the overall maturity of the company, which is reflected generally on the material that you're presenting, is also, evolving, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not a single thing. It's a general, more professional, let's say,
makes sense,
way of presenting.
One last question for me is around boards, right? So I'm actually part of a board, and like you I'm sure you're on plenty of boards. How do you see your role as a board member with regards to the startup? Do you get very hands-on, operational? Do you just kind of appear there once every 2 weeks and 2 months and kind of give an opinion?
Consult, yeah.
Well, it depends, as always, right? I think that for starters, you should be more on the advising side, right? Not ready to go hands-on, but a priori, you should need to be hands-on, right? Like if the founder needs so much help, maybe it was not a very good founder to begin with. Of course, you want to give them the space to operate and do their thing and so on, and then you give general direction. Having said that, of course, there are cases where things don't go so well, or there are some very big strategic decisions that you have to really step in and say, okay, guys, what are we doing here? Where do we want to go? Who are we hiring? Because I think people also don't realize the board generally hires all the C-level executives, right? So the moment you start hiring top talent, the board is really involved. And, that there's some areas that you can really steer the direction. I would never go to day-to-day stuff, because really the founders should be capable of taking care of that, but more on the strategic and, this area.
I want to shift gears a little bit now. From the journalist perspective, it's an exciting time for the European ecosystem because we're seeing some winds of change. We're seeing some willingness to change policy to reflect a more competitive environment. And we've heard complaints from founders. We've heard complaints from investors. A big problem is the idea of a lot of market barriers that don't allow European ideas to really flourish. Are you optimistic about these changes? Like, have you followed the news, and are there things that you think will facilitate your work and the impact that you have set out to achieve with Evercurious?
I think it's generally changing, as you said, and to the good direction, definitely. I think we're very far away from the US standard, let's say. And that's, it's an unfair comparison, right? Because the US is a single market, single language, huge market.
Yeah.
Regardless of, how, as you said, Americans are all about the vision and, money is flowing a little bit easier and so on and so forth. But really on the market side, it's a single market. I think it's as simple as that. Whereas Europe is fragmented. I think it does get a little bit easier for startups to scale across Europe.
Yeah.
But still my advice is go to the US as soon as possible. I don't think this is changing anytime soon. Having said that, we think that European companies need to be pan-European as much as possible. And that's something we're really trying to achieve here. We're not looking specifically for Greek companies, for example, or any other geography specifically. We're trying to find how can we leverage Greece as part of a multinational startup, maybe headquarters in Switzerland, a few people in Greece, a few people in the UK, just each country has something maybe different to offer. Why don't we combine that into a single company and then try to compete worldwide?
I was curious because you mentioned that the advice you're giving to your startup. What is kind of the magic that Evercurious will be doing differently in the future? Because there are so many VCs that are coming up in Greece the next few years. So what is it that you do differently?
I think the one thing that we both, me and George, the other partner of Evercurious, were engineers, and we have been a bit through the process. So we're bringing a little bit this ex-operator, whatever you want to call it, vibes, and we speak a little bit the same language with founders. We see that every day. We resonate a lot with founders.
Yeah. You think they probably sort of
hope
sense
so.
it as well?
I cannot speak for them, but yes.
No, I bet they do. Right? Because it's not common. You're right. Yeah. And you have similar touching points and things in the conversation. Yeah.
So I think this is, it starts to pay off in terms of, meaningful connections with the founders. That's the one thing. And the other things that we really focus, as I said in the beginning, on the deep side of the technology, which is also, we see a shift there as well, but I think most VCs are generally looking for the easy to scale, low capex, software only kind of deals, whereas we're not afraid to go on the hardware side and, go a bit on the riskier technology territory.
Get your hands dirty with the deep tech.
Yeah, so I think this gives us a slightly different edge than most other VCs. Now, if this is going to be successful, I definitely hope so.
In a year's time, I will be asking some of the founders that have actually invested in to see what they see in you guys.